Ryan had always been an ambitious young man, though life had never been easy for him. At 23, he found himself working long hours at a local cafe in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city. He was a student, juggling his studies and a part-time job just to make ends meet. Every morning, he would wake up early, dress in his uniform, and catch the bus, all while wondering if he was ever going to make something of himself. The cafe he worked at was a popular spot for high-class customers. It was the kind of place where people sipped expensive coffee and discussed business deals, their lives worlds apart from Ryan's. He often felt out of place among them, but it didn't matter. He needed the money, and he enjoyed the sense of purpose his job gave him, even if it was just serving lattes to the city's elite. One afternoon, as Ryan wiped down the counter, a woman walked in who would change his life forever. She was in her early 70s, with silver hair that shimmered in the sunlight, and a presence that commanded attention without even trying. She was elegant, wearing a tailored black dress, simple but sophisticated. Her name was Diana, and she had been a regular at the cafe for months now. At first, Ryan had noticed her because of her beauty and grace. She carried herself with an air of mystery that intrigued him. But as time went on, he noticed something else: she was always alone. Diana would sit at the same corner table, her eyes often lost in a book or a stack of papers. She had a quiet demeanor, and Ryan couldn't help but be drawn to her. Despite the difference in their social status, he began to look forward to the brief moments when their paths would cross during his shifts. One day, as Ryan brought her usual cup of coffee black, no sugar, she smiled at him and struck up a conversation. Her voice was soft, yet firm, with the kind of warmth that made you feel like you were the most important person in the room. "How's your day going?" she asked, her eyes twinkling. "Not bad, just busy as usual," Ryan replied, offering a shy smile. Ryan spent the next few days in a state of confusion. He had uncovered secrets about Diana's past that he wasn't sure how to handle. He wanted to believe her, to trust her, but how could he when he had learned about her previous husbands, the strange circumstances of their deaths, and the inheritance she had gained? The journal he had found was a heavy burden, one he wasn't sure he could carry alone. He couldn't help but wonder, had he married into something far more complicated than he had ever imagined? The weight of Diana's confession hung heavily over Ryan. The past few days had been a whirlwind, and every moment of clarity he thought he'd had was quickly clouded by doubt. He had loved Diana with all his heart, but now he wasn't sure if that love was enough to withstand the truth of her past. Could he truly trust her? Was the woman he married the same person she had been all along, or was she still running from her past, hiding from the consequences of decisions she could never escape? As the days passed, Ryan tried to go back to some semblance of normalcy, but nothing felt normal anymore. They still shared meals together, still went on trips, still lived in the same mansion, but everything had changed. The love they had shared seemed strained, as though something between them had shifted, like a curtain had been pulled back to reveal a reality he wasn't prepared to face. Diana continued to insist that she loved him, that she wanted a future with him, but Ryan wasn't sure what kind of future that would be. He had never felt more trapped in his life. The luxury of their mansion, the lavish trips, and the designer clothes, all of it had begun to feel like a gilded cage. He was no longer the young man trying to escape the burdens of a working-class life. He was a man caught between the past and the present, unsure of whether he could move forward with Diana or whether he should walk away from it all. One afternoon, as Ryan sat alone in the garden, contemplating everything that had happened, he saw Diana approaching. She looked more somber than usual, her face reflecting the same unease that had been plaguing him. She stopped in front of him, her eyes searching his face as if she were looking for something, anything, to reassure her that everything would be okay. "Ryan, we need to talk," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. He looked up at her, his expression unreadable. "We've talked enough, Diana. I don't know what else there is to say." Her shoulders slumped, but she refused to look away. "Please, just listen to me. I know I've made mistakes. I know I've kept things from you that you deserve to know. But I'm asking you to trust me now. We've been through so much together, and I can't let it end like this. Ryan felt a pang in his chest. The woman standing before him wasn't the same woman who had swept him off his feet months ago. This woman was vulnerable, desperate for him to understand, for him to forgive her. And yet, despite the hurt he felt, a part of him still cared deeply for her. I don't know how I can trust you again, Ryan admitted, his voice barely a whisper. You've kept so much from me. How do I know you won't keep hiding things? How do I know this isn't just another part of the game you've been playing all along? Diana's eyes filled with tears. I'm not playing a game, Ryan. I never wanted to hurt you. I was just trying to survive. Everything I've done, every mistake I've made, it was all in an effort to protect myself, to protect you. I thought that if I gave you everything I could, if I made you happy, maybe I could outrun the past. But I was wrong. The past doesn't just disappear. It follows you. Ryan looked at her, the uncertainty still gnawing at him. I don't know if I can keep living in this world you've created. It's not what I thought it was. I thought I was marrying someone I could trust. Someone who loved me for who I am, not because of what I could give you. Diana's face softened, and she stepped closer, her hand gently resting on his. You're right. I haven't been honest with you, and I can't change the past. But I can promise you one thing, I love you, Ryan. I want a future with you. And if you're willing, I'll do whatever it takes to prove that to you. For a long moment, Ryan stared at her, weighing her words carefully. He didn't know if he could ever forget the secrets, the lies, and the fear that had built up between them. But there was a part of him that still wanted to believe in her, still wanted to believe in the love they had shared. He had always prided himself on being independent, on relying on his own strength to get by. But now, for the first time, he realized that maybe he didn't have to do everything alone. Maybe, just maybe, he could face the future with someone by his side. The choice wasn't about the past, it was about what he wanted for the future. Was he willing to take the risk and move forward, or would he let the fear of what Diana had done in the past destroy their chance at something real? I don't know if I can ever forget the past, Diana, Ryan said slowly. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to see if we can build something together. A real future. Not a perfect one, but one where we're honest with each other. Diana's eyes lit up, and she pulled him into a tight embrace. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this chance. I promise you, I won't let you down again. For the first time in days, Ryan felt a flicker of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. They would have to face the shadows of Diana's past, confront the secrets that still lingered, and rebuild the trust that had been shattered. But at least they would be doing it together. In the days that followed, Ryan and Diana worked to create a new life. They started by being more open with each other, talking about their fears, their doubts, and their hopes for the future. Diana opened up about her past, answering Ryan's questions honestly, and together they began to understand the events that had shaped her life. It wasn't easy, but they were committed to making their relationship work. As the weeks passed, Ryan found himself growing more comfortable in his new life. He had never imagined he would be here, married to a woman with such a complicated past. But he realized that his life wasn't just about the wealth or the luxury, it was about the connection they shared. Diana had made mistakes, but so had he. They both had things to learn, and they both had the opportunity to grow together. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony, watching the sunset over the ocean, Ryan took Diana's hand in his. I'm not sure what the future holds, he said, his voice steady but full of determination. But I know I want to face it with you. We'll take it one day at a time. Diana smiled softly, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the setting sun. I can't ask for anything more than that. One day at a time, Ryan. That's all we need. And for the first time in a long while, Ryan felt peace settle over him. The road ahead would be uncertain, but it was a road he was willing to walk with Diana by his side. Despite all the questions swirling in his mind, Ryan tried to keep up appearances. He went through the motions of his new life, still enjoying the luxury and comfort that came with being married to Diana. They spent their days in the mansion, went out to dinners in the city, and traveled to exotic places, but beneath it all, something wasn't right. Ryan could feel the weight of the truth pressing on him, and he knew he couldn't ignore it forever. One evening, as they were sitting in the living room after dinner, Diana seemed unusually quiet. Normally, she was full of energy, asking about his day and making jokes to lighten the mood. But tonight, there was an air of tension that neither of them could ignore. "Ryan, what's wrong?" Diana asked, her voice soft, but there was an edge of concern in it. Ryan hesitated. He wanted to tell her everything, to ask her about the journal, the picture, and the secrets he had uncovered, but he didn't know how to bring it up without completely shattering the illusion of their perfect life. He looked at Diana, seeing her sitting there calm, composed, as if she had nothing to hide, and for a moment, he almost lost his nerve. "I'm just tired, Diana," he said, forcing a smile. "It's been a lot to take in lately." Diana studied him for a long moment, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You're not being honest with me," she said quietly, her voice full of concern. "You've been distant for days. What is it, Ryan? Is there something I don't know?" Ryan looked at her, searching her face for any signs of guilt, but there was none. She looked genuinely worried, as if she couldn't understand what was wrong. For a moment, Ryan felt the sharp sting of doubt. Was he imagining things? Had he misunderstood everything? But the truth he had uncovered still gnawed at him. The journal, the photograph, the strange behavior, he couldn't simply ignore it. "I found something, Diana," Ryan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Something about your past." Diana's face went pale, and for the first time, Ryan saw a flicker of unease in her eyes. She swallowed hard, and then she stood up from the sofa, her expression changing from concern to something more guarded. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice tight. "I found the journal," Ryan continued, his words coming out in a rush. "I know about James Weston. I know about your other husbands, A&D. I know how they died." "Diana, what's going on? What aren't you telling me?" Diana stood frozen, her eyes wide with shock. For a long moment, there was silence between them. The kind of silence that felt thick with the weight of unspoken truths. Ryan's heart raced as he watched her, waiting for her to say something, anything. Finally, Diana spoke, her voice shaky but calm. "Ryan, I never wanted you to know any of this. It's not a part of my life that I'm proud of. But everything I've done, every decision I've made, has been because I wanted a future. I wanted to protect myself, and you." Ryan shook his head, confused. "Protect us? How could any of this protect us? You were married to these men, and they're all dead, Diana. You inherited everything from them, but it seems like something went wrong every time. How can I trust you after all this?" Diana's face twisted in pain, and she took a few steps back, as though she was preparing to run, to hide from the truth she had been running from for years. But instead, she seemed to gather herself and sat back down. She placed her hands on her lap, staring at the floor for a long time before she spoke again. "Ryan, I never wanted to hurt anyone. You have to understand, I wasn't always like this. When I first married James, I loved him. I thought it was going to be my happy ending. But he wasn't who I thought he was. He was cruel, Ryan. He was controlling, manipulative, and he had his secrets. I didn't know what to do. He had everything. I was just a young woman, trapped in his world. And when he died, I thought it was an escape. But then I realized that I didn't just inherit his wealth, I inherited his enemies too. Ryan listened intently, his thoughts racing as Diana continued. After James, I tried to move on. I married again, but each time, it felt like the same story repeating itself. Another man who seemed perfect, another man who turned out to be dangerous. The second husband wasn't much better than James. And then there was the third. It seemed like they were all tied to something dark, something I didn't understand until it was too late. Ryan's mind was reeling, but he couldn't stop listening. Diana's voice was trembling now, her eyes filled with regret. You're right, Ryan. It's a pattern. And I've tried to break it. I thought if I just kept moving forward, if I just kept trying, maybe I could outrun the past. But now, I've realized that running from it isn't enough. It's always been right behind me, and I've been afraid of it catching up. She looked up at him, her eyes full of pain. I didn't want you to be a part of this, Ryan. I didn't want you to get caught in the mess of my life. But I love you. And I thought, maybe, we could start fresh. Together. Without the shadows of my past hanging over us. Ryan's mind was spinning. This revelation, this confession was more than he had ever expected. It wasn't just about wealth or power. It was about a woman who had spent her life hiding from the consequences of her choices, a woman who had built a life based on fear and survival, not love. I don't know what to think right now, Diana, Ryan said quietly, feeling a wave of uncertainty wash over him. You say you love me, but how can I trust you when you've kept so much from me? Diana reached out, her hand trembling as she placed it on his. I know I've made mistakes, and I know I've lied to you. But I swear to you, Ryan, I didn't want to drag you into this. I wanted you to have a better life, a life free from the mess I've created. I wanted to give you everything I couldn't have. Ryan pulled his hand away, standing up and pacing around the room. His thoughts were a whirlwind of doubt and confusion. He had fallen in love with a woman who had given him everything he wanted, but at what cost? What was he really a part of? And how much of Diana's past was still lurking in the shadows? He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear: nothing was ever as simple as it seemed. Ryan's life had changed dramatically since his wedding to Diana. The days had flown by in a blur of luxury, travel, and pampering. He was living in a world he had once only dreamed about. Diana was a constant presence in his life, always caring for him, always there to listen, and always offering him everything he could want. But despite the outward perfection of their life together, something had begun to gnaw at Ryan's mind, something he couldn't quite shake. It had started with small things, almost imperceptible, but the more Ryan thought about it, the more he realized that things weren't as perfect as they seemed. Diana had always been incredibly secretive about her past. She would mention her late husband, but only in passing, and never with any real detail. She often referred to him as someone who had left a lasting impact on her life, but Ryan had never been able to get her to talk about him for long. One evening, as they relaxed in the living room of their mansion, Diana seemed distant. She was usually warm and engaging, but tonight, there was a tension in her demeanor that Ryan couldn't ignore. She kept looking at her phone, her brow furrowed as if she were reading something she didn't want to see. Ryan tried to shake off the feeling that something was wrong, but it was hard to ignore. Diana, is everything okay? He asked gently, his voice breaking through the quiet. She looked up, startled, as though she hadn't realized he was watching her so closely. Of course, Ryan. Everything's fine. Ryan wasn't convinced. He knew her better than that. Diana had always been an open book when it came to most things, so why was she suddenly acting so strangely? He let the matter slide for the time being, but it was far from forgotten. A few days later, Ryan found himself once again wandering the halls of their mansion, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that had settled deep in his chest. As he passed one of the many rooms in the house, he noticed something strange. The door was slightly ajar, and through the crack, he could see a large wooden desk with papers scattered across it. What caught his eye, though, was a photograph sitting on top of the desk. It was an old picture, one of Diana from years ago. She was standing next to a man Ryan didn't recognize. Both of them were smiling, but there was something in the way they stood together that made Ryan pause. He stepped closer, drawn to the picture. As he picked it up, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unease wash over him. The man in the photo looked strikingly familiar, too familiar, in fact. He had the same piercing eyes and the same chiseled jawline that Ryan had seen in the office of a man he once met during a trip to the city, a man whose name had slipped his mind until that moment. Ryan's heart raced as he turned the photo over. There was a name written on the back, James Weston. His mind went into overdrive. The name sounded familiar, but it took a few moments for him to remember where he had heard it before. James Weston was a wealthy businessman, someone who had owned several properties around the city, including a vast estate near the outskirts. He had met him briefly during a networking event for Diana's charity. Ryan had only exchanged a few words with him, but the conversation had stuck with him, mostly because of how imposing the man had seemed. He was the kind of person who made you feel like you were standing in the presence of greatness, and for a moment, Ryan had felt incredibly small in comparison. Ryan couldn't ignore the nagging suspicion that had settled in the pit of his stomach. Was this the man Diana had married before? Was this the late husband she had mentioned so briefly? The one she never seemed to want to talk about? He set the photo back on the desk, his hands trembling. His thoughts were racing, and his mind refused to let the question go. He knew he needed answers, but how would Diana react if he asked her about the picture? Would she be angry? Would she dismiss it again, as she had dismissed so many of his questions in the past? Unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong, Ryan decided to investigate further. He didn't want to distrust Diana, but the strange behavior, the locked doors, the secretive phone calls, it was all too much to ignore. The next day, while Diana was out shopping, Ryan found himself alone in the mansion once again. He had made up his mind. He was going to find out more about her past, no matter what it took. He wandered through the house, glancing into rooms that were usually off-limits. Most of the rooms were beautifully decorated, with expensive furniture and rare paintings, but it was the library that caught his attention. The door was slightly open, and he could see the rows of books on the shelves. Ryan stepped inside, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, but something told him that the answers were here, somewhere. He began scanning the shelves, running his fingers along the spines of the books, until one caught his eye. It was a thick, leather-bound journal, tucked away on the bottom shelf. He pulled it out, wiping the dust off the cover, and opened it carefully. The pages were filled with handwritten notes, dates, and names. As Ryan flipped through the pages, he realized that it was Diana's personal journal. It was a collection of thoughts, memories, and reflections, most of which were about her life before they had met. His heart sank as he began reading more closely. The journal detailed a life that Ryan hadn't known about, a life that was far darker than Diana had ever let on. She had written about her first husband, James Weston, in a way that was far too intimate to ignore. The journal spoke of their whirlwind romance, their marriage, and then, shockingly, of his sudden death. According to Diana's notes, James had died under mysterious circumstances, and while Diana never outright admitted it, there were hints that his death was not entirely natural. Ryan's breath caught in his throat as he continued reading. The journal went on to mention how Diana had inherited his wealth, and how, over the years, she had married again, each time to wealthy men who had met untimely, unexplained deaths. The pattern was undeniable. Ryan slammed the journal shut, his hands shaking. This was too much. Diana had never mentioned any of this to him. She had painted a picture of a life filled with love and loss, but she had left out the darkest parts of her past. What had she been hiding all this time? And why? Feeling a mixture of betrayal, confusion, and fear, Ryan knew he had to confront Diana. But how could he even begin to ask her about something as serious as this? Could he trust her? Or had he been swept up in a dangerous game that he hadn't fully understood? As he sat in the library, the weight of the journal pressing heavily in his hands, Ryan felt the full scope of the situation hit him. The life he had thought was perfect, the life he had dreamed about was far from what it seemed. She chuckled lightly, her laughter soft and melodic. I can imagine. It must be tough balancing your studies with this job. The days after their dinner seemed like a blur for Ryan. Diana's offer lingered in his mind, but he struggled with the decision. He had always been independent, relying on his own strength and determination to survive. But now, he found himself questioning everything. Was it wrong to accept Diana's help? Would he be compromising his integrity? But the more he thought about it, the more it became clear to him. Diana wasn't just offering him money or financial relief, she was offering him a chance to change his life, something he had dreamed of for years. He had spent so many sleepless nights worrying about how he would pay for his next semester's tuition, how he would keep up with bills, how he would ever escape the grind of part-time jobs. This was a chance to escape that life. After a few days of careful consideration, Ryan made the decision. He called Diana and agreed to accept her help. But what he didn't expect was what came next. The following week, Diana invited him over for another dinner, but this time, there was something different in the air. She was excited, her eyes sparkling as she greeted him at the door. I'm so glad you called, Ryan. There's something I need to talk to you about, she said, her voice full of warmth and enthusiasm. Ryan followed her into the grand dining room, where a candlelit dinner was already set on the table. He couldn't help but notice how beautiful the room looked, how everything seemed so perfect. It was like stepping into another world, one he had only seen in movies. Diana, however, was calm and collected, as if this were her normal life. I've been thinking, she began, about how we can make this official. I know you've agreed to accept my help, but I want to make sure you know how much I care about you, Ryan. I don't just want to help you financially, I want to offer you a future. And there's something I'd like to ask you. Ryan's heart started to race. Was she going to offer him a scholarship or another business opportunity? He was prepared for anything at this point. Diana took a deep breath and looked at him with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. I want to marry you, Ryan, she said, her voice steady but full of emotion. I want to offer you not just my money, but my heart. I know it might seem sudden, but I believe we could build something beautiful together. You've brought a light into my life that I haven't had in years. Ryan was stunned. Marry her? He couldn't wrap his mind around the idea. She was 71, and he was just a young student with barely enough to his name. The age gap was massive, and their worlds were so different. He had barely known her for a few months, and yet here she was, offering him a life that seemed too perfect to be real. But as he looked into her eyes, Ryan could see the sincerity there. Diana wasn't asking for anything in return other than his love, and the more he thought about it, the more it felt like a chance he couldn't pass up. She wasn't just a wealthy widow offering him money, she was someone who truly cared, someone who had seen something in him that no one else had. After a long pause, Ryan finally spoke. I don't know what to say, he admitted. This is so unexpected. I never imagined that my life would take a turn like this. Diana smiled softly, her eyes filled with understanding. I know it's a lot to process. But I believe in us, Ryan. I believe in you. And I want you to have everything you've ever dreamed of. Let's build something together. The proposal was everything Ryan never thought he'd experience. It felt like a dream, something so far out of his reach that it might as well have been impossible. But here he was, standing at the precipice of a new life, a life where all his worries could disappear in an instant. I'll do it, Ryan said, his voice shaky but resolute. I'll marry you, Diana. Let's start this new life together. The moment those words left his mouth, Diana's face lit up with joy. She reached for his hand and pulled him into an embrace. You won't regret this, Ryan. I promise you, she whispered in his ear. And just like that, their whirlwind romance was sealed. The wedding came together quickly. Diana's wealth and connections made the process smoother than Ryan could have ever imagined. She spared no expense, hiring the best event planners, florists, and photographers. The ceremony was set to take place in a beautiful garden at her mansion, surrounded by the towering trees and perfectly manicured lawns that Ryan had admired from afar. It felt surreal to him, like he was stepping into a fairy tale. Ryan's friends were surprised when they received invitations. They couldn't believe it when he told them he was getting married to Diana. To them, she was a mysterious figure, a woman of wealth who had seemingly come out of nowhere. Ryan's decision to marry her raised more than a few eyebrows, but his friends were happy for him, even if they didn't fully understand the situation. The wedding day arrived, and Ryan couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and nerves. Diana was everything he had imagined: graceful, beautiful, and so full of life, even in her advanced years. She wore a stunning white dress that seemed to shine as she walked down the aisle. Ryan stood there in his suit, watching her approach with awe. Their vows were simple but heartfelt. Diana promised to love Ryan with all her heart, and Ryan promised to stand by her side, no matter what life threw their way. The ceremony was brief but powerful, and as they exchanged rings, it felt as though a new chapter of their lives had begun. Ryan couldn't believe that just a few days ago, he had been struggling to get by, working long hours at the cafe, unsure of what the future held. Now, he was married to a woman who had given him everything he ever wanted and more. The wedding was like something out of a dream, and Ryan couldn't help but wonder how long this magical feeling would last. After the wedding, they left for a private honeymoon at an exclusive resort on the coast. The luxury of it all was overwhelming for Ryan. He had never experienced anything like it before. Their room was spacious, with a view of the ocean and a private pool. Diana was constantly attentive, making sure he was comfortable, that he had everything he needed. For the first few days, everything seemed perfect. They relaxed, enjoying the peace and quiet of their private getaway. Ryan felt like he was living in a dream. He had never been treated with so much care and affection, and Diana seemed to truly enjoy his company. But as the days went by, Ryan began to feel a nagging unease. There was something about Diana's devotion that felt a little too intense, a little too consuming. She would insist on doing everything for him, bringing him meals, helping him with his clothes, always being around. At first, Ryan appreciated it, but soon, he began to feel suffocated. He was beginning to wonder if he had made the right decision. Was he truly in love with Diana, or was he just overwhelmed by her wealth and generosity? Was he marrying her for the right reasons, or was he just caught up in the fantasy she had created? As he lay awake one night, staring out at the dark ocean, Ryan realized that his new life was both a blessing and a mystery. He had everything he had ever wanted except for one thing, the certainty that this was real love. And in that moment, he wondered just how much of Diana's past he really knew. Ryan looked up, surprised. "How did you know I was studying?" "You have the look of a student," she said with a smile. "The way you carry yourself. You're smart, but there's a certain weariness that comes with working long hours." Ryan smiled back, impressed by her observation. She wasn't just another rich woman trying to live in her bubble. There was something different about her. "Yeah, I'm trying to get through school, but it's tough," he admitted. "I don't really have anyone to help me out with the bills, so I have to work extra hard." Diana nodded sympathetically, her gaze softening. "It's not easy, is it?" Ryan shook his head. "No, not at all." Over the following weeks, their conversations became more frequent. Diana asked about his studies, his dreams, and even his family. She was always curious, always listening intently, as if she cared about what he had to say. Ryan began to look forward to her visits more than anything. It was like the rest of the world faded away when she was around. They would talk for hours, discussing everything from literature to philosophy, and Ryan found himself opening up to her in ways he hadn't with anyone else. She was intelligent, witty, and full of life. Despite her age, she had an energy that made him feel like he could accomplish anything. And for the first time in a long while, Ryan felt truly seen. One evening, Diana invited him to dinner at her home. Ryan was nervous at first, unsure of what to expect. Diana's house was enormous, a mansion that spoke of wealth and history. The walls were lined with paintings and sculptures, and the furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. But Diana was kind, and she made him feel comfortable in her world. As they sat down for dinner, Diana served a delicious meal and continued to ask Ryan about his life. She was genuinely interested in him, and for the first time, Ryan felt like someone actually cared about him, not because of his financial situation or his job, but because of who he was as a person. "Ryan, I've been thinking," Diana said, her voice calm yet serious. "You're an intelligent, capable young man. I think you could do great things in life, but you're being held back by circumstances. It's not fair." Ryan looked up at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she continued, "you don't need to struggle like this. There's more out there for you. I can help." Ryan was taken aback. "Help? I don't understand." Diana leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. "I've watched you, Ryan. You've got potential, and I believe in you. I know you're not looking for handouts, but I'd like to offer you something. What if I helped you with your finances, took the burden off your shoulders? You wouldn't have to work all these hours. You could focus on your studies. You'd be free." Ryan's heart raced as he processed her words. Could this really be happening? Was she serious? "You don't need to do this for me," Ryan said, still in shock. "I can manage on my own. I'll figure it out." But Diana shook her head. "No, Ryan. I want to help. I see something in you that others don't. You deserve more than this life, and I want to give you the chance to prove yourself." For a moment, Ryan was silent. The offer was generous, but it felt almost too good to be true. He had always worked hard for everything he had, and accepting help from someone he barely knew seemed like a big leap. But at the same time, he couldn't ignore the opportunity before him. This could change everything. "Let me think about it," Ryan said, unsure of what to do. Diana smiled warmly. "Of course, take your time. But know that I'm serious, Ryan. I see something in you that could make a real difference in this world." As Ryan left her mansion that evening, he couldn't stop thinking about her offer. His mind raced with possibilities, each one more tempting than the last. Diana had made it clear that she wanted to help him, and for the first time in a long while, Ryan allowed himself to dream of a different future. Little did he know that this conversation, this chance encounter, would be the beginning of a whirlwind that would change his life forever.